Well, 2 people have died after being shot while protesting in Kenya. Demonstrators are marking a year since at least 60 people were killed in anti-government demonstrations. In the capital, Nairobi, Parliament and the President's office have been barricaded. Last June, protests against government tax reforms turned deadly. Demonstrators stormed Parliament and President William Ruto dissolved the cabinet to try to appease the protesters. They accuse the government of corruption and mismanagement. Catherine Soy is in Nairobi with more on the protests.
Well, we are at the city centre and protesters, young people, have come here. They're saying that they want to pay tribute to many others who died last year during those anti-government protests. More than 60 people last year were killed. And even after those protests died down, we have seen a series of abductions allegedly carried out by the police. Now, people here are saying they are even triggered even more by a killing recently of a young man, a blogger, a teacher called Albert Ojwang. He was killed in a police cell right here in the city center. The reason why he was arrested is because he posted something against the deputy police boss, allegation, bribery allegations against him. So he had Ojwang arrested and then he ended up dead. So people here are very angry about that. They're saying that there is a lot of police impunity. If you go to this side, we have them coming from all sides of the city center. Police have cordoned off this entire city center. People are not allowed to get in or out of the city center, and they've also blocked main roads leading to the city center. So many of them are saying that they're just here to pay tribute to those who died, those who are still missing. We have seen a series of abductions since those protests last year, and we are being told and we have actually been speaking to young people who were taken or abducted allegedly by police, and then they came back to say that they were tortured. So people here angry at the police, saying that this is police impunity because the police is supposed to protect the citizens. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Nairobi.
We're going to get the very latest from Malcolm Webb, who is in Nairobi. Malcolm, I know you're out on the streets and hopefully you can hear me. Can you just give us an update of what it is like there? We understand that 2 protesters have been killed there in the last couple of hours.
Well, there's certainly been many thousands of protesters, not just in Nairobi, but across the country, and they've been met with a lot of violence by the police. Now, the local press have reported that about a dozen were already being treated for gunshot wounds before they reported that 2 had been killed. But I'm going to stand aside so we can zoom in a bit and take a look down the street. This is one of the main highways leading into Nairobi's city centre, where for the last couple of hours there's been an exchange between police firing tear gas and protesters, many of them young people chanting "We are peaceful," but in other parts of the city we've heard reports of looting of shops and violence. This comes in a context where it's become very common to see gangs of men wielding clubs appearing at protests, sometimes appearing to work with the police. In other cities in Kenya today, they've been outnumbered and chased off the streets, these men with clubs, who the authorities deny that they're the ones sending them, but that's what's widely believed among protesters. And it was, of course, on these very same streets, exactly 1 year ago today, on the 25th of June, that many thousands, tens of thousands of protesters gathered in what was part of a series of protests triggered by a government proposal to increase taxes, but that led to widespread widespread calls for President William Ruto to step down. And it was on this day a year ago the protesters broke into Parliament just down there, and dozens of them were killed in the police crackdown.
Yeah, just in regards to that crackdown by the police, I mean, they've been accused of using excessive force as well as killing and abducting a number of protesters. Has anyone been held to account in the year since that happened?
Well, according to the rights community, they have not effectively been held to account to the human rights groups that have been campaigning on this, although the government points towards some cases of police officers who have been investigated or suspended from duty. But another topic that's angering the rights groups here today is the fact that just a couple of hours ago, the government ordered the broadcasters in Kenya to stop live broadcasts of the demonstrations. It was a communication that came from the Communications Authority of Kenya. Kenya's National Human Rights Commission responded almost immediately, saying that that was unconstitutional and illegal. Some of the national television broadcasters, commercial operators, had continued broadcasting. We've since heard that one or possibly two of them have had their broadcast streams shut down, which means they're now only viewable on YouTube and online.
Can you just take us back to how this all began and the controversial finance bill that was aiming to raise billions of dollars by imposing higher taxes? Can you just run us through exactly what that was and what has happened to that bill since?
Well, it was the budget 1 year ago that was so controversial. That's what many people who were already feeling economic hardship were angered by the government's plan to increase taxes in what they felt was a sort of backdrop of widespread and blatant corruption. There was at the same time a backlash against MPs who were posting videos on social media of their helicopters or of themselves waving wads of cash at church services. At the same time, ordinary Kenyans were being asked to tighten the belt. That's what brought people onto the streets, but it turned into a widespread protest movement with people complaining about corruption and calling for President William Ruto to step down. The protests were met with force by police who used tear gas and in some cases gunfire to break them up, and it also triggered a series of arrests and abductions, which rights groups say the government is responsible for in part of a crackdown that's continued in their view ever since. Now, it was only in the last few weeks that people have been back on the streets, but in very small numbers, as you mentioned, this time around triggered by recent cases of police violence, not by the budget. Now, the budget that was just passed in recent days by Parliament does include some tax increases, some minor changes to tax arrangements, but nothing compared to the ambitious tax hikes last year, which President William Ruto, after protesters entered Parliament, he withdrew the bill. But those tax hikes were mostly passed later in the year. But for most Kenyans, the economic situation hasn't got any better. People are still feeling the pinch, and certainly the widespread discontent with the government hasn't got any better, because in spite of demos in recent weeks just numbering a few dozens or maybe a few hundreds of people, today, almost out of nowhere, there have been thousands on the streets in towns and cities all across Kenya once again.
Yeah, like you say, thousands out on the streets there today. Can you just give us the feeling where people think that this might go? Is it going to escalate further from here?
It's difficult to say. I mean, this time last week, the numbers were very small on the streets, as I said. This time a year ago, they were far greater than they even are now. I mean, the widespread discontent with the government seems to be palpable. Many people on the streets chanting that Ruto must go, or chanting Wantam, which is an expression by the demonstrators that they believe President William Ruto should serve one term, although the next elections are not due for another 2 years until August 2027. Now, whether the demonstrations will carry on as they did this time a year ago, it was that time every Tuesday and every Thursday. It was normal to find protesters here on the streets of Nairobi, and normal to find police firing tear gas at them until those protests largely died down in around August last year. We're waiting to find out what kind of momentum the movement will have this time around. But the one thing that first brought people onto the streets just a few weeks ago was police violence, and police violence doesn't seem to have stopped. Those reports you've mentioned of gunshot wounds and possible deaths today. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how the community of young Kenyans online who populate many of these protests react to the news that we get about those injuries from gunshot wounds as soon as we get it.
Thank you so much, Malcolm, for talking us through exactly what is happening there on the streets of Nairobi. Malcolm Webb for us there in Kenya.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.